your life.
Hi, this session is about how do you prepare for a typical B school interview. And when we talk about a B school interview, we need to take into consideration that a lot of pressure is there, right? Because for a lot, many of the students appearing in B school interviews like IIMs or FMS or Symbiosis or things like those, this might be their first interview experience. That means that you've never faced an interview at all, right? And you may approach this interview with a lot of trepidation, a lot of fear factor, that's going on. But the idea is that if you start preparing for an interview with a basic set of questions, and as we progress, obviously, so you keep on adding the more difficult, the more subtle variety questions to it, right? So when you talk about a basic interview, what do we need to understand? We need to understand that the first question is typically an ice-breaking question. That is, tell me something about yourself, or introduce yourself, or the trickier version would be, tell me something about yourself that's not mentioned in your CV or in your application form. So that becomes tricky, right? Now, the simple idea is that your introduction should be crisp, to the point, and typically it should be something close to a 50-60 second answer. So a strategy is like, you jot down the basic points for an introduction. For example, I would like to talk about my engineering degree, what all things that I learned while I was in hostel, and what did it equip me with. And if I got placed, okay, it's an achievement. I got placed. I would like to talk about my placements. Then something very, very short about my family, about the values that I picked up from my father or my mother, right? And then, fundamentally speaking, go on about yourself. That means your philosophy. What do you find challenging? What are your interests? What are your hobbies? Things like those. Now, a very important point in this introduction part is that you should lay emphasis on what do you want the interviewer to pick up. For example, your voice intonations, right? They could go up and down, right? On what do you want to impress upon? Suppose I want to impress upon that in my pastime, I like to cook continental and Chinese cuisine. Now, when I'm saying I want in my pastime, I'd like to cook continental and Chinese cuisine. Now you're emphasizing on continental and Chinese cuisine. So the problem is, if you do not make these very, very strong, markup points during an introduction, what will happen is, then the interviewer might get something like, go into academics or things of, into uncharted territories. If you want that person to remain on what you want them to remain on, do that. Make that introduction very, very crisp, highlighting the bullet points that you want to emphasize upon, and that should be in the back of your mind. It should not look like it's a crammed up introduction, right? But at the same time, that it should come across as a natural flow, but the emphasis points, the critical points need to be mentioned. That's point number one. Another basic problem that we students typically face are, what are your strengths and weaknesses? So ideally speaking, when we talk about strengths, typically we tend to, take it very, very lightly. That's the worst part, because we say that think of 3 adjectives, those are your strengths, and or 5 of the adjectives that are your strengths, and a couple of lighter negatives, so that becomes your weakness. In fact, it's one of the very important things, because asking somebody what are your strengths is basically tantamount to asking that person whether he or she has analyzed herself, whether you've analyzed yourself. That means, whether you've introspected and have delved deeper into yourself about what sets you apart. about what sets you apart. So what sets me apart is very important because I want to, impress upon the panel that this is what is different about me. So if you mention very casually that, hardworking, I'm hardworking, this is my strength, then what? In today's world, we don't find hardworking as a strength. I think it's more of a requirement, right? So if it's not a strength, because that is the strength of everybody else. Again, everybody is fighting, everybody is struggling, right? So you need to work hard, right? Who doesn't work hard? So that's not a strength, right? You have to think of more creative, more strong answers, more stronger words, and then back it out with an example. Suppose I ask you ask me like, what's your strength? I think I'm well read. That's my strength. Okay. What all do you read? The next question starts coming from your strengths. So, preparing those 5 strengths and 3 weaknesses on a piece of paper and remembering that helps tremendously, because then you can start guiding the interview. Okay. So I'm well read. Now, what do you read? Okay. I read basically something on the net, and I read novels of different kind of genres or things like those. So those make sense. Those make a lot of sense. Now, coming to the more important part, questions on why MBA is more commonly replaced these days with why MBA now at this point of time. So suppose you're a fresher. Let's understand. Suppose you're a fresher. So the idea is they'll ask you like, why not you work for a couple of years, right? And then think of doing an MBA. You gather some work, make sense, and then approach an MBA. Why not? This kind of a strategy. Conversely, for a WorkX person, the typical question asked is, okay, so you have worked for 1.5 odd years or 2 years. Why do you want to leave the job and do an MBA now? So now this kind of a question would be definitely there. Why at this point of time in your life? So if you're already working, so you need to find some reasons, probably from your work experiences till date, that I met a couple of people and I understood certain things. I felt there is a need because I saw a gap. And because of that gap, I want to cover that gap and move on to the next hierarchy, the next level. So I want to do an MBA. That's for a WorkX person. A fresher probably could, say that I am fresh out of the college. I'm fresh of ideas. I'm creative, and I want to do an MBA because I do not want to do a job, a regular job, right? And because I'm not getting a very good job to start off, let's say a commerce graduate or an arts graduate or a BSc science graduate, right? For example, you can say that probably after this graduating, I'm not getting a decent enough job or good enough job to start exploring the options, because those jobs, the kind of jobs are not very easy in my country, in India. So I'm looking for an MBA because I want to look at it that I want to complete my education, right? And then after completing my education, join the management cadre of the company and then move forward. I do not want to bring a break into this kind of a thing. Right. So that is the second part. Okay. A third very important question is why this particular B school? And this is a very, very important question, well-researched question. Why this particular B school? For that, you need to research the website, right? Go onto the website, do the research. What is the B school? When was it founded? What are the major companies coming for placements? What kind of progress I see in my job after graduating out of this B school? Read about their alumni, right? Where are they working? What kind of work are they doing? And more importantly, the objectives of the course. For example, if you take up a course in MICA, Mudra Institute of Communications, definitely it's very well certain that you are applying for a course in marketing, digital marketing, marketing analytics, right? Marketing research, things like those. and Mica stands apart. Mica stands very different in terms of positioning itself. But if you say, I want to go to IRMA instead of Rule Management Anand, you'll have to be very definite about why IRMA. Where is your long-term goal? Where is that long-term objective that gets fulfilled after graduating from IRMA or after graduating from Mica, whatever, right? So these are specific institutes. Even in a general MBA program, what the problem is that people tend to understand that a general MBA program, I do not know what specialization would I make, so I do not know why I want to do an MBA. So that's a big problem, right? A general MBA program gives you an option to explore options, right? That means in your first year, first trimester, typically you're studying everything. Some bit of finance, some bit of production, some bit of marketing, some bit of HR, some bit of organizational psychology and things like those. But the point is, once you're through with your first trimester, second trimester, you have a better idea about what are you good at, what interests you, what excites you, and then you can take a choice. But then the why MBA question has to be answered right now during this interview itself. So you should be better prepared. You cannot say that I did not have anything else to do, or I did not want to continue with my engineering domain, or I do not want to continue with my BSc domain, I have an MSc domain, hence I am doing an MBA. It's like saying I'm going in for Katrina Kaif because I don't like Aishwarya Rai. It's not like that. You have to be more honest about it. Why at this point of time in life, right? And we have a question coming up. It's from Nitin Sharma. Why invest some amount of money in an MBA versus starting up your own business or venture? Nitin, I'll answer you. An MBA basically gives you a big, an exposure kind of a thing, a huge exposure. Suppose you're an engineering grad and you want to do an MBA, you want to start up your own venture. I don't say it doesn't happen. It happens all the time, right? Bangalore is the venture capital of the city of India. And there are a lot of startups which are started by students who have, in their engineering or even final year engineering or even non-engineers and coming up with platforms or ideas. That's there definitely. But the point is, when you do an MBA, you typically get exposed to a lot of things, how to look at an opportunity from various perspectives, not just a technical perspective. You're looking from a commercial perspective. You're looking from a feasibility perspective. You're looking from a financial perspective, right? So the whole spectrum broadens, right? And more important than that, during an MBA course, you'll often find a lot of colleagues, a lot of friends, a lot of peer group, right? Who are interested in similar ideas. So, you are not rigid about your ideas. You learn to adapt. So I might be, I might want to start a fast food chain, but then somebody says there are many fast food chains, right? There's KFC, there's McDonald's. Why do you want to start another fast food chain? So we might get into something like, okay, we can start up a company which serves quick food, but Indian food. We're not looking at burgers or pizzas or things like those. Indian fast food. We probably start up a chain which serves pav bhaji or dosas or uttapams or things like those, right? So the whole idea is about that expansion, and you become more adaptive to a lot of ideas, to a lot of things. That's important. That's pretty important. So I would say investing in an MBA broadens the vision, gets you better people. It makes you more adaptive, and that's the reason why doing an MBA and then starting a business is a far credible idea, right? Instead of just starting on your own. Because if you look at the success rate of people who've done their MBAs, right, that would be higher. That would be much higher. So having answered Nitin's question, I can move ahead. Typically, the dicey questions are, hobbies versus interest. Now, this is typically very, very scary because we tend to mix both the things. Right? Hobbies is something that I would do without the possibility that, I'm too tired today, or it's not in my mood today, I'm not, feeling okay, and that's why I would not pursue my hobby. Hobbies are something that we'll pursue almost on a daily basis, almost on a very regular basis, right? Whereas interests are something which are less involving. I'm less involved with my interest areas. So if I say I'm interested in watching football, okay, so that is an interest. If I say watching football is my hobby, then it has to be a persistent hobby. That means I'll not miss a game. I'll record, I'll watch it later, but I'll not miss a game. I'll wake up at 2 in the morning and watch a Manchester United game. If I'm a die-hard football aficionado, right? I'll do that. That's the difference. So hobbies versus interests is a difficult question. People tend to mix it up and eventually get stuck up. Because if you say playing badminton is my hobby, I'll definitely ask you the weight of the shuttlecock, right? I'll ask you the height of the net, right? I'll also ask you the dimensions of the court, right? Because you said you're playing badminton. Obviously, you're aware. What are the kind of fouls that you can commit in badminton? And those kind of things. So that's important. So hobbies versus interest has to be very, very clear. If you're not very clear on hobbies versus interest, the best thing is you need to find a mentor, or go to a person and tell, these are my hobbies, these are my interests, what should I write? Now, unfortunately, because of that social media presence these days, you people don't have much hobbies, right? You're more on the pastime basis, so watching a soap opera or Friends or Game of Thrones, and that's not a hobby. Please understand that. Your hobby should reflect about your personality. That's important. From an HR perspective, it's very important. They try to match your strengths with your hobbies and then your long-term objective, and try to see like that there's a coherence or not. If there's a very incoherent kind of a personality, it shows a very, very confused personality, right? And most B schools, especially the cream ones like Auxiliary and FMS and IIMs, they're very choosy because they have a SPGM included, right? So there's a long list of candidates coming, right, for interviews. So they're very choosy. If they don't find interest in you, probably they'll not select you. Another question is like, instances where you displayed teamwork, instances where you displayed, leadership skills. And the most common answer that I'm hearing these days is, I organized the college fest. Organizing the college fest, fine, but then that comes from everyone. Everyone giving an interview says, I played a part in the college fest, I organized the college fest, and things like those. That is the problem. Everybody's saying it. There are no certificates for being an organizing. Even if there's a certificate, everybody has that certificate. So it's not a very, very strong, statement to make that instances of teamwork would be, finishing off the college project report. Obviously, everybody does it in a team. So whether you did it in a team or whether you did it solo, it's always in a team only. So this is not a very, very strong thing coming, right? So you need to be very clear about what instances would I like to portray. So just to get the attention of the panelist. For example, I can say that I organized a drive, right, for clearing up the, the garbage that was dumped near my house or near our colony, and the municipality was not there. They were not picking up the garbage. We cleared a drive. We made a drive because it was smelling and it was a breeding ground for so many things, mosquitoes or bacteria or harmful things, right? So we organized a cleaning drive. I organized a cleaning drive, right? We got hold of a couple of people. We got hold of a couple of private sweepers who could come. We hired them. We went along. We got it cleared, and then made it a point to spread that awareness, inside the locality, that you cannot dump your garbage every day there because it eventually affects the whole locality. It talks about something different. So wherever you are supposed to make a difference, please try to show that you've done something that has made a difference. That's important. That's leadership. Something that's not very common, right? Playing a game of football. I was the football captain of my college team, or of my this thing. That's not that great. It doesn't sound very, very convincing, right? You do something which is different. At least think. You'll recall a lot of instances where you actually displayed a leadership skill, right? Now, another very tricky question that comes is the role model thing, right? And again, most of us skip this wonderful opportunity to track the interview, to move the interview, right? Suppose I say, everybody, we Indians are very obedient, right? So we can say that my father is my role model, my mother is my role model, or my elder sister is my role model, and all those things. The point is, as a panelist, I don't know about your elder sister, your brother, or your sister, or something of that sort, or father or mother. What will happen is, okay, what qualities inspire you? Max to max one question. And that's the end of it. But if you say, instead of, saying father or mother, I'm not saying they're not your role models. Let them be. But for a panel perspective, what I would like to suggest is try to create an, image in front of the panelist, right? If I say this kind of a role model, are they going to suppose me ask me questions? So if I say, everybody has been to a McDonald's, right? So Ray Rock was the founder of McDonald's, right? We all know that. So if I say, Ray Rock, the founder of McDonald's, is my role model. So now the things start rolling. Okay, what did Ray Rock do that was so great? He made a burger. This is very simple. Everybody made a burger. But then you said, but then sir, this burger is sold around the world. 50 million burgers sold in a single day, every day, around the world. 150 countries. If that burger is so simple, why does McDonald's do this kind of business? Or Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, he's my role model. Elon Musk is my role model. Or to say, something about China that doesn't happen very good is Jack Ma is my role model. So read about Jack Ma, read his biography, read Elon Musk's biography, read Sam Walton, read, these kind of characters, or Mother Teresa, or anybody, Nelson Mandela, anybody. But say a role model on which questions can be attracted. I can attract question, right? And I can discuss that question for the next 4-5 minutes. Now what happens is, if you have these kind of role models, what's the biggest benefit? You are literally speaking, driving the interview for the next 3-4 minutes, for the next 3-4 questions. It would be, something, around your role model, which is good because you are also prepared on your role model. And the panelist is asking questions. It's good. The interview is going in familiar territory. It's not going into unfavorable territory, unfamiliar territory. So you can drive it. This is where, things like these come. So it's important to put in the right role models also. Now, another problem is the typical questions that I'm foreseeing right now for interviews which are coming in, Symbiosis or Narsi coming up, or even IMs coming up, right? Something like I am Kozhikode or I am Ahmedabad, right? They're very clear about asking one another, like, what is your take on the budget? Now the problem is, what do we mean by your take on the budget? Your understanding of the budget. They really are not interested in listening to data. You can't say the budget made a plan for this lakh crore for railways upgradation. 10 crore families for this was under the health insurance. They want to understand what do you interpret out of it. As a B school aspirant, as a person who is trying to figure this out, let us understand one thing. When you say the budget snapshot, you need to be saying something like this. So for example, the budget, it talks about the railway upgradation and it has increased the outlay into budgets, right? Railway budget by 25%. What is it for? Because the railways was having a tough time. There was a lot of problems, old tracks, old bridges. They need upgradation, electrification, and they need budgets for this. So this time, railways has got a 25% increase because upgradation and modernization of railways is there. You'll always say that, for example, the bullet train project has also been launched. So it's all about railways, right? So you have to justify, if you're saying something, what is it all about? If you're talking about the health insurance scheme, you need to highlight why was that scheme, brought into place. That's important, right? So you say that a lot of underprivileged people, below poverty line people, they used to suffer because of diseases, obviously, and They could not afford to go to a private hospital because they do not have an insurance cover, right? So the insurance cover would come by the central government and the state government kitty. The people who are below poverty line can also afford a treatment probably in a private hospital because the government's hospitals are too full and they would not take care of minor ailments, and there are few number of hospitals. So I think the scheme makes sense in India because it's going to cover these people. So whatever are your answers, whatever are your, snapshots on budget, be clear and explain them. Just don't give data. Because data, I think everybody has because of WhatsApp and Facebook and all those things. Data is available off the record. The data is available. That what are the major announcements in the budget? I'll type it and I'll get it. There's nobody who's interested in that. As a B school, aspirant, you're supposed to convince that I have read, I have understood, I have taken the for and cons, pros and cons, both are taken into account, right? And for this health scheme, these are the plus points. Against the health scheme, the point is the states will have to shed in 40% from where their 40% is going to come. And the states have not said yes to it. Sir, we have a case in GST also where the states did not agree. And it took so many years to implement GST. So if the states do not agree to this, it's going to be a problem. So that's what I foresee. So whatever point of the budget that you're discussing, be thorough with it. Don't try to tell them, okay, budget point number 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't impress them at all. So that's the whole problem, right? So this is another problem, right? That students are facing. And next, what is your alternative career plan? That's a question I am Kozhikode is asking, right? In its form. And secondly, during the interview also it comes very, very awkward. Like if you're not selected, then what? Now the students typically get zapped like if not selected, then what? So you say that, sir, I've done fairly well in the interview, whatever is the case. I've done fairly, smile and say that I've done fairly well and I don't see a reason I'm not selected. Or I think, sir, I'll be selected. I have more interviews lined up. So I'm very clear about doing my MBA and I'm sure that I'll be converting one of the B schools and I'll be doing my MBA. Stay certain that yes, I'm going to do it and I'll be able to do it. And that's important. And if they ask you an alternative career, suppose you're getting a job offer, okay, say that, I'll be working in the IT firm, I have a job offer from Infosys or Convergys or let's say HCL, and then probably look at an MBA 2 years down the line. So I do have my plan B. They would just want to understand, do you have a plan B or not? If you do not have a plan B and you're coming for an MBA course or an MBA, program, then probably you're not a very right candidate because you don't have plan B. What if this doesn't work? And management is all about if this doesn't work, something else needs to work. If this product fails, something else needs to succeed. So it's all about creating those plan A and plan B. So that's important. That's very important. Right? Now, another very, very dicey question, tricky question that typically comes up in interviews is rate your interview. Now that's a really, what do you call it, a very dicey question because how are you supposed to rate your interview, right? Now the idea is that, okay, first of all ask the scale on which I'm rating, because if you say, in a very hurried manner, you say, sir, 6 out of. So it's important to complete. So I rate myself 6 or 6.5 or 7 out of 10. So say that denominator also out of 10 or 4 out of 5. Please be very clear in saying that. And then they'll ask you, like, how did you come at this figure of 4 out of 5 or 7 out of 10 or whatever, right? Say that, sir, basically, if I look back into my interview 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes back, I say that I've been able to answer these decent number of questions. I think I did not lose my poise. I did not get nervous. And I was very clear in explaining my reasons of doing an MBA and all those things. So I think I deserve a 7 and 8 kind of a thing. Justify. You need to justify why a 7 or why an 8. That's very important. That's very, very important, right? And anything if somebody wants to ask, you can always ask a question or a very tricky situation or a tricky question that you think that will come into your interview. right? So that is important, right? So you need to be this way. Second, you can search out questions, my dear. You can always search out questions of previous interviews. You can always go back to interviews. You can find it on Google, like what are the typical questions asked. But don't be too intimidated by the questions, because of another factor, right? Every interview progresses as per the candidate. It's not that I'm going to ask a BTech candidate who's a girl and who's working in an IT company. Suddenly I start asking about dance forms of India. What's the difference between a Bharatnatyam and a Kathakali? I would not. Why would I? There's no reason. Unless she has said that dance is one of the things. Dance is one of the things that probably is one of my hobbies. Now, if you're saying that dancing is one of my hobbies and Indian classical dance is one of my hobbies, then I'm going to ask questions on that. Otherwise, out of the blue, I'm not going to ask you. I'm not going to ask you. Okay, we have a question from Shubham. He says, how much shall I spare for an MBA? I mean, ideally. Interesting question. How much should you, share for an MBA course? It's interesting, right? I think it's very important to calculate something called an ROI, right? Calculate an ROI, return on investment. So suppose you are taking out for a program like a Nursing Monji course like NMIMS Bombay, right? That course is going to come close to 25 lakh rupees, right? And what is the average placement that's being offered? Something around 12 and a half odd lakhs. So that means, 12 and a half odd lakhs average package multiplied by 5, that is around how much? 65 lakh, and you should be able to repay your loan of 25 lakh rupees, right? So ideally speaking, what you should do is take the average. That's what my suggestion is. My formula would be this: take out the average salary, annual salary, multiplied by 5, and see the investment that you made is recovered in around 4 or 5 years. That's an ideal time. And most of the cases it's this way only. Even in IIMs it is the same way, right? Even if you earn a package of 18 lakh, you'll not be able to repay 18 lakh to the bank. Otherwise, what are you living on then? Typically speaking, not more than 40%, 30% of your take home would be for repaying the loan, right? So that's important. So it's not possible that I get a package of 18 lakh rupees and 15 lakh rupees I'll repay my loan. It doesn't happen that way. So if you have an 18 lakh package, probably you'll be able to repay close to 4 lakh rupees per annum onto your loan. So I think the best way, Shubham, is multiply by 5, take this thing out, and then calculate how much are you investing. So it should be ideally, in a 5 years time, whatever I'll earn, divide it by 3 and see that if you're able to, get into this kind of a ROI analysis. And Shubham has another question. Good and cheap MBA colleges. Don't use the word cheap MBA colleges, right? There's nothing called a cheap MBA colleges. You can say a budget friendly or a cost friendly MBA college, right, Shubham? So good colleges and cost, pocket friendly MBA colleges would be universities. So, Banaras Hindu University, BHU has a good course in MBA. Delhi University has a good course in MBA. DU has a lot of courses, in fact. MIB, MHROD, SRCC, GBO, and even Punjab University, Chandigarh, UI, AMS, and UBS, Chandigarh. So the university courses are cheaper. I would say university courses are cheaper. It's more pocket friendly, right? And the placements are okay, good enough, decent enough. So if you do not want to shell in a lot of money, you go for the state colleges, the state universities, and the central universities. Those are definitely better bet. Yeah, pocket friendly. You got it. That's great. That's great. You got it. It's pocket friendly. So probably in FMS Delhi would be the best option if you can get into that. But unfortunately in FMS Delhi would come something at 99.2 percentile in CAT. So not everybody would be able to reach FMS Delhi. That's the whole point. And you can try out these kind of university sponsored colleges and Baroda University and these kind of things are there. MS University Baroda is there, and Bombay University is there. They offer courses. The MMS programs, right, in Maharashtra, these are more pocket friendly variety, right? So that's there. Now, anything else? And I would just like to say that, be prepared, and most importantly, take some mocks. And mocks with whom? Now, the important part is mocks with whom. You should take mocks with people who are from the industry, and if they are from HR field, because eventually when you sit in a B school final placement also, you'll be interviewed by an HR guy, right? So if you can get your mocks done by an HR person, right, a person who is from HR background into the industry and has been training people for quite some time, that would be a wonderful idea, because that is very clear-cut identification of what traits are you displaying and what traits are you missing. So that analysis has to happen, and with every mock, every subsequent mock, you start improving. I've seen students who were faltering in their mocks, unable to speak, giving it up, and in 4 mocks, right, they were fluent in their answers, very clear, expressive, everything happening. So 4 or 5 mocks, good mocks and good analysis, and one more caution, right? Don't try to give mocks like, one today, one next tomorrow, one day after tomorrow. It's not that way. Take time. Take time to take your mocks. Discuss with your mentor. Like, this is where I'm getting stuck, right? What should I do? I do not have an answer, right? There's one more tricky question that I would like to point out. If you have a gap year, that's important, because most of us have taken a break for CAT preparation, right? After engineering or after graduation. So how do you explain the gap year? I think if you can get a working certificate from one of the family members, of a father, friend, or something, that you were working somewhere, right? That would be a great idea. But if you cannot get it, it's better to acknowledge that I was very keen on doing my MBA. I was very clear, and I was well aware that with a parallel job and that to an entry level job plus an MBA preparation, I would not be able to. Take the blame on yourself. Take it on yourself and say that it might not have been possible for me to score a good percentile in CAT along with a job and this kind of thing. So I took a call. Since MBA was something that I wanted to do and I was very clear about it, I decided to invest my time into an MBA. So if I did join a coaching institute. No harm in saying that. I did join a coaching institute and then prepared. I took the mocks, I took the analysis, and here I am sitting in front of you, sir. So that that justifies a 6-month, 8-month period is easily justified. There's no problem with a 6-month, 8-month period break kind of a thing. You can easily justify that, and that's how it is. One more thing is, like, when we talk about B school interviews, they also ask you, like, have you really thought about what after MBA, right? Now the most you can call it a point of concern here is that you really do not know what specialization you're going to take. So you have no ideas about what will happen post MBA, which company would come, would I sit in, would I fit in, these kind of companies, when this profile is working with me. So you're not very sure, but they still ask. Why? Because they want to have some clarity about what are you thinking. If everything runs fine, if everything runs very good and smooth, right, then where do you see yourselves? So if you're saying consulting, be specific, right? Say the name of the company, like I would like to work with BCG or Bain or McKinsey or things like those. Why and that particular account, right? Or if I want to retail, I would like to work with HUL or PNG, right? You can even say Patanjali, things like those. But be clear about the sector that you want to target. It's absolutely important to be clear about the sector that you want to work with. You want to come to US engineering, you say good brands, right? Like engineering and electrical engineering plus MBA would land me into a Siemens or a Hitachi or these kind of company. So that's important. You should be very clear about post MBA and even the long-term goals. Now the most difficult and the most onerous part in preparing for a B school entry is the long-term goal. Long-term is typically 10-15 years down the line. You don't know. You don't know how would you look. You don't know what will be your capabilities, what will be your skill sets. It's very difficult to answer. But then have a vision about where do you see yourself 10 years down the line, 15 years down. You can get inspiration, right, from Facebook, from from the people whom you know, right? People who are sitting in strong positions, right? I'll be the don't say I'll be the CEO of a company, not necessarily, but you can be more humble and say that I'll be in the top management. I'll be working with some place into some metropolitan city and traveling and doing this. If I'm into marketing, if I'm into strategy, I'm into consulting. I'll be traveling around the world, picking up assignments, this kind of a thing. So you have to be clear about your long-term goals as well. You cannot say that I don't know. I don't know 15 years down the line where I no. In a B school interview, this is a cardinal sin. You should not say that. So be prepared with your immediate post MBA goals and then the long term goals, obviously. So this part has to be very, very clear, right? Otherwise, they consider that you are not clear about your goals and objectives, and that's going to be a negative. That's going to be a negative. Okay, so I think this whole thing has, I think it has helped the people who watched us on this thing, and this will be posted also, I believe, yeah, in some time, it will be posted on Facebook. You can review and you can ask your friends to review, and all the best. Thank you.